Hello and welcome to Hardtalk India. My guest today is one of India's most eminent lawyers. In 1957, she topped the bar exams in London. In 1991, she became the first woman Chief Justice of a High Court in India. And late last year, she published her autobiography to widespread acclaim. Here today to talk about the book and the issues raised in it is the former Chief Justice of Himachal Pradesh, Leila Seth. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, I noticed, Mrs. Seth, that you're one of very few judges to have written her autobiography. What prompted you to write one?
Well, I can't say I'm one of the very few. There are others, but
just a handful.
Yeah,
just
a handful. Actually, what prompted me was a number of reasons. One of them was that many people asked me what it was like for a woman to be practicing in Bihar in 1959 when I started there. And many people also asked me how it was to balance work with family, and also how I brought up 3 very unusual children. So I thought I should write, and the eventual push came because I had a granddaughter, the first grandchild, after I was 70, and I thought I wouldn't be around to tell her what life was like when I was young, and so I thought I should pen it down.
So the autobiography, in a sense, is a bedtime story for your granddaughter?
Well, it's dedicated to my husband, who gave me the space to grow, and to my granddaughter, who is our future.
You say that, in fact, one of the things that people were curious about was what it was like being a woman lawyer practicing in Patna in the late 50s. You write about the male chauvinism that you experienced. I gather one of the most common comments was, "I want a lawyer, not a woman."
That's true. It's absolutely like that. In fact, the male, not only the clients, but the male lawyers, the younger lawyers, they were very protective of their area or their terrain, you might say.
They saw you as an intruder.
Yeah, as an intruder, and they were always telling the clients, don't brief her, she can't run around, she can't do anything, her husband will get transferred and she'll move away. So I had to be, over particular about the way I worked and show my sincerity and seriousness.
How much did things change over the 44 years since then?
I think they've changed quite a lot. I mean, perhaps they should change even more, but I see at that time when I joined in Patna, there were just 2 women. There was one very senior woman lawyer who was practicing on the criminal side, and then there was me. And when I left after 10 years, there were still only 2 women practicing in Patna. But if you look at the Delhi High Court today, there are hordes of young women.
But if you look at the Supreme Court and you look back over the 53, 54 years of India's independence, we've only had 3 women Supreme Court judges and never more than 1 at a time.
That's right. And that's also, I think it's like a token having a woman there. 26 judges, out of which 1 is a woman. And I suppose that's also partly because men make all the decisions.
In fact, yes, you're very right there, because judges are chosen by judges themselves.
Yes.
And that's been the case now for 10 years. So if we haven't got more women judges, that proves that senior judges are deliberately keeping women out.
I wouldn't say exactly like that. They're deliberately keeping. Probably when they come to choose a woman judge, normally they're taken from the High Court. They're very rarely taken directly from the bar to the Supreme Court.
But you're not seriously saying that women don't deserve to be elevated more often?
Absolutely not. But what they do is, when they start assessing, I suppose having that male mind, they start assessing the men, or they're more critical of the woman if she's, if she's either unmarried or, they're more critical of her socially also, in her social behavior than they would be of a man, I think. And
so
I think
women have to pass tougher tests in the eyes of their own peers as well?
I think tougher tests both in the question of competence and tougher tests both in the question of the way they behave in society.
Because, even though you became the first woman Chief Justice of the Himachal High Court in 1991, in the 12 years since then, I think we've had barely 2 or 3 more.
That's right. That's
it's not that there's been a deliberate decision to bring women in faster and at a bigger rate for higher positions.
But you see, what has happened is, when I became a judge of the Delhi High Court, within those 2-3 years, say 78 to 80, there were about 10 women in the High Court, and out of about 400 judges. And even today, now there are about 600 judges in the High Courts, and there are still about 10 or 12 women.
So in fact,
only.
the percentage
Just
has fallen.
Has fallen. So therefore, the people they're going to choose from to bring to the Supreme Court are just those 10 or 12 women.
What about something else? It's not just that judges don't seem to be very keen to bring more women into top judicial positions. There's also the very nature of the law that is often gender biased. How did you as a judge and later as a Chief Justice handle cases where the law itself seemed to discriminate against the interests of women?
Maybe you could give me some example, because basically
Well, for instance,
some of the laws have been changed to help women, like 498A in the Criminal Procedure Code, where if a woman dies within 7 years of her marriage, then the onus shifts on the
let me
on
give you
other
the
side.
example of
Yes.
taxation law. Taxation, in a sense, was one of your areas of
Yes,
expertise.
yes.
Under the HUF, a woman can't be a co-partner, and therefore her status seems to be inherently inferior to that of either her brother or her husband or any other male relative. Now, as a judge, how did you handle such cases? Was it a problem?
Well, I don't think you have a choice. You have to go according to the law. However much your heart may be the other way, you have to decide according to the law. It's only where there's a borderline case where you can push things a bit, you might decide according to
But
justice.
did it cause you internal conflict?
I suppose so, but actually, when I was a member of the Law Commission, I did recommend that women should become members of co-partnery. And as it happens, there are a number of states now, Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, Kerala, about Maharashtra, about 5 or 6 states where women are now entitled
But
to be
in the
co-partners.
northern Indian Hindi heartland,
No,
where the HUF in a sense proliferates,
yes.
that change hasn't come about.
It hasn't come about. It's been recommended by the Law Commission. Let's hope it'll happen.
What about something else? The attitude of judges, often when they interpret the law, seems to betray prejudice as well. You quote in your book an example of former Chief Justice Ranganath Mishra actually saying to a women's seminar, "Go back to your homes," he said, "God has not created man and woman as equal." It's an astonishing thing for a judge to say.
Well, I mean, that's the mindset that has been built over years and years and years. And I think it's very difficult for men to change. And so even when they find a woman as a Chief Justice in, say, Himachal, I found that they found it very tough to have me as the sort of...
They resented it?
they never showed any actual resentment, but I think one or two of them, especially those who were from more feudal background, found it very hard.
And you were aware that in their eyes, yours was a token representation.
Not in the High Court, I didn't feel that, because I think there were not many of us.
But
I
amongst
came,
your judicial
yeah,
peers?
yes. But I came to be Chief Justice by virtue of my seniority, and it was not denied to me, let's put it like that, when my turn came. So.
Something that was, in a sense, denied to you was going to the Supreme Court. You came very close to it. You write in your book how in 1988, both Chief Justice Pathak and then his successor, Chief Justice Venkataramaiah, wanted to elevate you, but it never happened. Were you bitterly disappointed?
I think at the time I was quite upset, but in retrospect, I feel maybe I was better off as a Chief Justice. I don't know. I don't.
Is that
regret it.
acceptance or is that understanding?
I think I don't regret it anymore. At that time, I was upset. There's no doubt about it. But now I think...
In
well,
your book, you write of Fatima Bibi, who became the first woman Supreme Court judge, which is a position you should have had if the promises made had been fulfilled. You write, "A couple of Supreme Court judges told me that she had lobbied for the position on the grounds that she would be the first Muslim woman in the world to be a judge of the Supreme Court." Do you think that was a fair comment?
made by me?
That's right.
Well, this is what I was told.
But you don't name the judges who told you.
No, but I don't think that's necessary to do. But I don't think that I've said something which is incorrect.
But
If you
it's
read
only
my book,
hearsay, isn't it?
if you read my book, you'll realize I've been extremely honest all through. And but I think it's not
But, you know,
right.
it's not the honesty I'm questioning, it's the fairness. I mean, in a sense, when you don't name the judges who told you this, it's only hearsay.
It's not hearsay for me. It may be hearsay for you because you don't know the judges. I know the judges. And I don't think it's proper to name judges. But the fact is that I wouldn't write something, especially about another woman, if it weren't what I've been told.
In fact, in your book, you go considerably further. You write that her appointment showed that lobbying worked. It showed that politics worked. It showed that the misuse of religion worked. Above all, you write, it showed that every decent convention could be broken and that merit was no consideration. Aren't you worried that that sort of sentence makes you look a bit like a bad loser?
Well, I did think about it. In fact, when I read it, wrote it, I thought twice, and I thought to myself, should I write it? Does it sound as if it's like sour grapes? I said no. I must say what was a fact. The fact was that she had retired 4 months before she was appointed to the Supreme Court. And it was a very, very unusual situation. And the fact that it was political, there was no doubt about it.
You very strongly feel she should never have been elevated.
Well, I mean, not in those, maybe many years earlier, I don't know, but at that stage, certainly she retired. The normal practice is it's a sitting judge that is brought into the Supreme Court from the High Court. Very, very rarely has this happened. I think once when somebody had retired 1 day earlier. But 4 months, nobody even thought she was in the running.
You also say her judicial record was quite ordinary.
Yes.
Given that you're talking about someone who was in a sense a rival of yours, is that not a little uncharitable?
Well, I don't feel it's uncharitable because I think it's the truth. And I think I don't want to run someone down because I think it's not fair for one woman to run another woman down. And
but you've done that.
As she was the first woman. Well, I mean, I think sometimes home truths have to be said. And I'm a person who has stood for secularism all my life, and I stand up for it even now. And I know that that was one of the considerations for appointing her was that she was a Muslim.
She was favored because she was a Muslim and because she lobbied politicians.
Well, that's the truth.
Given your experience, would you today support the efforts being made by the present Law Minister to change the appointment of judges, to move away from the collegiate system towards a sort of National Judicial Commission?
I'm 100% clear in my mind that we need a more transparent system of appointment.
Is that a National Judicial Commission?
And that will be the National Judicial Commission, because I think that the earlier system before the collegiate system was also not very transparent. The collegiate system has become even less transparent, if I may say so. Judges just form their own group, decide, and there is no transparency as to why someone is being appointed. Maybe they know the people best, but still, there should be transparency. I think the process of appointment should be transparent.
But the National Judicial Commission, as sketched out by Arun Jaitley in the bill that's being considered by Parliament, actually has a role for politicians to play. Now, does that give you any qualms?
No, not really, but I think that they should have. I think that the composition of the National Judicial Commission is very important. I don't know exactly what he's put in, but I think there should be 1 or 2 independent people, apart from politicians, apart from the judiciary.
So people of standing who are non-legal and non-political as well.
That's right, absolutely.
But what about a certain irony? In your case, it was 2 Chief Justices who wanted to elevate you. It was alleged lobbying by politicians that kept you out. Now, if politicians are present in this new Judicial Commission, won't that sort of lobbying increase?
Not really, because I think that the number, it will be a Judicial Commission which will have a number of judges on it, the Chief Justice of India, perhaps a senior judge of the Supreme Court, judges from the High Court.
So you're saying there's security in that
So
balance?
that will be in the balance. If there are 1 or 2 politicians, it's not wrong. Then they can have the leader of the opposition, they can have a law minister, and there will be independent people.
And this would be a fairer system?
A fairer system, and it will be an open system.
Would it ensure that the treatment that happened to you 14, 15 years ago wouldn't be repeated?
Well, I should hope so. I should hope that the system would be fair. Treatment to me, I would have been quite happy if one of the other women judges had been appointed.
But
Say
not
like
Fatima
Sujata Manohar.
but not Fatima Bibi,
like
because
Sujata
she was the
Manohar,
wrong
I
one.
would have been happy if she were appointed. I mean, I might have felt a personal loss of not going to the Supreme Court, but I would have had nothing to say. I would have been happy.
Now, towards the end of your book, you suddenly reveal that your son, the author Vikram Seth, is bisexual, and you say that his homosexuality was something that you found difficult to accept. Why have you revealed this fact? Because until you did so, it wasn't in the public domain.
No, I can't say it wasn't in the public domain, but I think it's important to say these things because I feel that so many people hide this fact and are embarrassed by it, where it is something which is part of one's psyche or nature.
Except that if it was being hidden, Vikram, your son, was hiding it, and in a sense it's his prerogative to hide. Why did you reveal it?
Well, I spoke to him about it, I showed it to him, and I don't think he had hidden it, because I remember...
But it wasn't known.
Well, I don't think that's also correct, because he's written poetry, which indicates it. right from
hints at it if you read between the lines.
No, but if you see a program that was done many years ago called Omnibus Program by BBC, in just after he wrote Suitable Boy, it's mentioned there. In fact, at that time I objected. I said to him, why do you talk about it now? And the producer, in fact it was co-produced by Aradhana and
Aradhana's your daughter.
Aradhana's my daughter, and Nadia Hager from BBC, and they wanted put in, and he had no objection. He said, well, it's a fact. And so it's
He
not...
was one of the two editors of your book. Did he, in a sense, welcome this revelation?
No, I think he didn't. He neither welcomed it. No, in fact, he said, we discussed it, because this is a subject that my brother, who also read my manuscript, said we shouldn't talk about. And we discussed it, and we said that it's very important for people to realize that there should be freedom, and that if it's a voluntary relationship, there should be no objection to it. And the whole objections that are being raised in India just now seem totally what is the correct word to say? Actually, as we were discussing, it was brought in by the English in the Indian Penal Code, and in England itself, they've now done away with that
Except
provision.
for the fact that you don't discuss it in terms of how you came to terms with it. You simply boldly mention it and move on. None of the trauma or pain that it caused you or your husband is actually part of that book.
Well, because it's a book about myself.
Which is why I would have thought that would be essential.
Well, I mean, the trauma was, in a sense, double trauma. Trauma was one that was something I was not used to, I was not mentally attuned to, and the other was basically that I knew that in India it was considered a crime, and I thought he would be exploited, and I didn't want that to happen. The fact is that now I feel, and we both felt, I discussed it with him, we both felt that it is something that so many people are forced to hide. It will give courage to others to be open about it.
So it was an example that you were setting for others to give them comfort and strength.
Absolutely, and also as he's not in a government job, they can't throw him out for that. We discussed that, we said, what can anybody do?
You know, you mentioned that homosexuality is a crime. There is at the moment, in fact, a petition before the Delhi High Court seeking to question the constitutionality of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which criminalizes homosexuality. Do you support that petition?
That it should be abolished?
That it should be decriminalized?
Absolutely. In fact, in the Law Commission, we had an opportunity. We didn't deal with homosexuality as such, but we actually had to deal with the rape, and we discussed the matter, and we said that there should be many, many other sexual offenses created, especially when they pertain to small children, even such things like sexual contact.
But you would be in favor of decriminalizing homosexuality?
Absolutely, because the words used in the section are not homosexuality. The words used in the section are carnal intercourse
against the order of nature.
The order of nature. Well, if you look at it, I think most women or men or married women must be having oral sex. And if you look at that, that's also against the order.
Would you say most men and women who are married?
I would think so, would be having oral sex occasionally, at least once in their life.
Now
and I would think that that is against the order of nature and is also a criminal act.
So just because of the vagueness of the language, it needs to be amended.
Yes.
Now the government in its response has argued that Indian society by and large disapproves of homosexuality, and the disapproval is strong enough to justify it being treated as a criminal offense even when adults indulge in private.
See, this is the way we are such hypocrites. Indian society thought that if a widow should be remarried, should want to remarry or should be remarried, it was a crime. It was something they thought, crime, it was something unbelievable earlier. Once the law was changed, now you never think twice if a widow remarries.
So this concern of Indian society would disappear when the law is changed?
Of course the concern will change, because why do we think it's wrong? Because that's what we've been mentally attuned to.
So this is one area where you would argue that the law needs to be ahead of public mores, because that's the only civilized position for the law to take.
Absolutely, and in fact, what was Indian society before the British brought this law in.
Except for the fact that
They were
if
very
you,
free society.
if you change the law to decriminalize, you might be doing the ideal thing, but you could be creating a dissonance between public morality and the law. Would that worry you?
What is public morality? That's what people tell you is public morality. What is two adults voluntarily decide something? Do they not have the freedom of choice? As long as they're not disturbing anybody else, it's not harming anybody else, I don't see anything wrong in that.
In your book, you make another very interesting revelation. You seem to accept the fact that most people are intimidated by the law. They find the uncertainty and unpredictability of it not just perplexing, but worrying. In fact, you didn't even on one occasion allow your husband to go to court for justice. You insisted that he settle outside at great cost to himself. Why is the law so frightening?
Well, one of the main things I think why I didn't let my husband go is law's delays. I think the delays are something just horrendous. And you go to the court, the matter is adjourned, the other side hasn't turned up. Sometimes it suits one side to delay it. Sometimes it's not like that.
But it's more than just delays, because you write in your book you can be called upon to pay damages even for something for which you are not responsible. There you seem to be suggesting that miscarriage of justice is somehow inherent in the way the law is practiced and implemented.
Well, it does happen quite often. I mean, after all, if you look at even criminal cases or other cases, we don't have many convictions. The reason is, of course, you have a BMW car, it becomes a truck when it comes to court. You have people who've seen a murder take place, then when they come to court, they never saw
But
it.
who's responsible? Is it judges? Is it lawyers? Is it the very nature of the legal system which requires evidence? I mean, where does the fault and blame lie?
I think that's why, you know, the Malimat Committee report is there. There are a number of reports have been made now where they say that the whole, at least as far as the criminal system is concerned, it needs a basic overhaul. Because what is happening is the witness who makes a statement before the police changes the statement when they come to court, either because they're purchased or because they're terrorized.
But you're
therefore, I
arguing
think
that the system needs an overhaul.
Yes,
Do
absolutely.
judges need to rethink their attitudes and the way they conduct themselves in court? Because if, on occasion, you can be made to pay damages for something you haven't done, surely you're pointing the finger of blame towards judges as well.
Well, I mean, that's because the record is not correct. I mean, what evidence comes to court, what evidence is brought to court, is what the judges decide on. I would
Do
say
the judges know that the evidence they're deciding upon is inadequate?
quite often
So then why do they decide?
they have no option. They have to go according to what is placed before them. They cannot look at evidence outside what is before
So
them.
judges, knowing that there is better evidence outside not available, are forced to take decisions on inadequate evidence
Sometimes.
and end up with what could be a miscarriage of justice.
Sometimes it happens. But the only hope there is that you go in appeal and maybe you can ask for additional evidence to be brought or do something. I mean, that's
Did you raise this when you became a member of the Law Commission for 3 years, 97 to 2000?
I think we have tried to, well, you know, actually, as far as the criminal law was concerned, we didn't really do very much because the Law Commission before us, the 14th Law Commission, I think, had done a huge report on the Indian Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure
But if
Code.
there's more that needs to be done, why don't
Well,
you do it?
they had made the suggestions. They had made many suggestions. But the question is, you know, the Law Commission is an advisory commission.
You mean it doesn't get listened to?
Well, this is something before I joined, I found out that, well, 50% of the Law Commission's recommendations are implemented.
So we have
that's a
but
good
we
job.
have, for the layman, a horrific situation. We have a former Chief Justice accepting that there are miscarriages in law that happen, that the system is inadequate, the judges have to take decisions on inadequate evidence, and sometimes even to convict when they know that perhaps the conviction is wrong. The Law Commission is aware of all of this, and yet nothing gets done.
Well, I think, you know, convictions don't take place so often. What happens is acquittals take place, which is very bad because if you have a 6% acquittal rate or a conviction rate, it's ridiculous. A 6%
But if
conviction rate
judges
is...
are aware that there are huge lacuna that need to be plugged and they're not being plugged, something is seriously wrong.
Well, I think that's for the government to take action because I think there are enough reports by the Law Commission, there are enough recommendations made by government, by judges' committees, which they should act on. I mean, it's really surprising that they haven't acted on them
But
yet.
you get the distinct feeling that the government is not responding with the alacrity it should be showing.
Well, I think either they're too busy doing other things or keeping themselves in position But I think that there's much more that can
So
be
when
done.
we seek justice from the courts, it's often with a wing and a prayer rather than with a guarantee of delivery.
That's right. That's absolutely right. There's no question about it. I mean, I would say that the majority of cases get decided correctly, but there are the odd cases that don't get decided correctly. And it's very astounding the number of acquittals we get.
Mrs. Seth, a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you very much, Darren.